President Trump, King Abdullah II, and the future of the Gaza Strip. An in-depth analysis of a controversial proposal, regional diplomacy, and the implications for the Middle East. 1. Introduction and Overview. 1.1 The context of the meeting. On a brisk Tuesday at the White House, an atmosphere of high stakes and delicate negotiations prevailed as President Trump hosted King Abdullah II of Jordan. The meeting, which captured the attention of international media and policy experts alike, was marked by the unveiling of an audacious proposal: President Trump's vision for the United States to assume control of the Gaza Strip, repatriate its residents to Jordan and other Arab nations, and spearhead a comprehensive redevelopment of an area scarred by conflict. This proposal, in its boldness and controversy, has ignited debates about sovereignty, humanitarian obligations, and the role of American leadership in the Middle East. 1.2 The key proposals and their significance. At the heart of the discussion was a plan that, if implemented, would radically alter the political and demographic landscape of one of the world's most volatile regions. President Trump's insistence on taking the Gaza Strip reflects a departure from traditional diplomatic approaches and suggests a willingness to reshape borders and populations in pursuit of strategic and developmental objectives. Equally significant was King Abdullah II's measured response, emphasizing that any such initiative must be executed in a manner that benefits all stakeholders, especially the people of Jordan and the broader Arab community. His call for a meeting among Arab nations to devise a collective response underscores the complexity of unilateral proposals and highlights the necessity of regional consensus. 1.3 Structure and scope of the analysis. This article endeavors to explore every facet of this high-profile diplomatic encounter. We begin by situating the meeting within its historical and geopolitical context, then move into an in-depth analysis of the proposals on the table. We will examine the implications of relocating entire populations, the economic and humanitarian dimensions of redeveloping a conflict-ridden territory, and the legal and diplomatic challenges such an undertaking entails. By drawing on historical parallels, international law, and strategic policy analysis, we aim to provide readers with a comprehensive understanding of what this proposal means for the region, for U.S. foreign policy, and for the future of Middle Eastern diplomacy. 2. Historical and geopolitical background. 2.1 U.S. Policy in the Middle East, a brief history. The United States has long played a pivotal role in shaping the political landscape of the Middle East. From its early support for the establishment of Israel in 1948 to its strategic alliances during the Cold War, American policy in the region has been driven by a complex interplay of strategic interests, ideological commitments, and economic considerations. Over the decades, U.S. interventions, ranging from military engagements to diplomatic initiatives, have left indelible marks on the region's borders and political dynamics. This history provides essential context for understanding the significance of President Trump's recent proposal. In the post-World War II era, American involvement was largely characterized by efforts to contain Soviet influence, secure access to vital energy resources, and support democratic governments where possible. However, these strategic imperatives often collided with local realities, leading to unintended consequences such as political instability and enduring conflicts. The Gaza Strip, in particular, has been a flashpoint in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a dispute that has repeatedly drawn in regional and global powers. 2.2 The complex history of the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip's modern history is one of conflict, displacement, and contested sovereignty. Once part of the British Mandate of Palestine, Gaza has witnessed multiple regime changes and military confrontations. Since the 1967 Six-Day War, when Israel occupied the territory, Gaza has remained a symbol of resistance and a focal point for international debate over the rights of Palestinian refugees and the prospects for peace. The Strip's dense population, limited resources, and recurring bouts of violence have compounded the difficulties of governance and reconstruction. The area's infrastructure has been repeatedly damaged by conflict, leading to dire humanitarian conditions for its residents. Amid such challenges, any proposal to redevelop Gaza must contend with entrenched political divisions, a legacy of mistrust, and the immense logistical hurdles of rebuilding a society from the ruins of decades-long strife. 2.3 Jordan's role in regional politics. Jordan has traditionally played a unique and stabilizing role in the Middle East. As a constitutional monarchy with deep historical and cultural ties to its neighbors, Jordan has often found itself mediating between conflicting parties and advocating for pragmatic solutions. King Abdullah II's engagement with President Trump reflects this tradition of cautious diplomacy. With a significant Palestinian population and a vested interest in regional stability, Jordan is both a stakeholder and a potential mediator in any resolution involving the Gaza Strip. Historically, Jordan has navigated a delicate balance between aligning with Western powers and maintaining strong relations with Arab nations. The current proposal, suggesting the transfer of Gaza's residents to Jordan and other Arab states, places additional pressure on King Abdullah II to safeguard his nation's interests while contributing to a broader regional solution. 2.4 Previous American proposals and their outcomes. This is not the first time that the United States has ventured to redraw the map of the Middle East through bold proposals. Past initiatives, such as the Camp David Accords and the various peace plans aimed at resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, have shown that even well-intentioned strategies can yield mixed results. While some proposals have led to temporary ceasefires and incremental progress, others have deepened divisions and generated backlash both domestically and internationally. A review of previous American proposals reveals a pattern. Unilateral or top-down approaches often fail to account for the complex local dynamics and the multiplicity of stakeholders involved. This historical lesson is particularly pertinent when assessing the feasibility and potential consequences of President Trump's plan to take the Gaza Strip. 3. The White House meeting, what was said and why it matters. 3.1 The setting, the White House and diplomatic protocol. The White House has long served as the backdrop for momentous decisions in U.S. foreign policy. On this particular Tuesday, the iconic corridors of power were once again filled with the weight of history as President Trump met face-to-face with King Abdullah II. The meeting, held in a climate of both optimism and tension, was meticulously staged to project strength, resolve, and a willingness to engage with even the most contentious issues of regional politics. Diplomatic protocol was rigorously observed, yet the substance of the discussion signaled a departure from the more reserved exchanges of previous eras. Both leaders appeared acutely aware that the words spoken within those walls would reverberate far beyond the confines of the Oval Office. 3.2 President Trump's vision. Taking the Gaza Strip. Central to the meeting was President Trump's provocative assertion that the United States should take control of the Gaza Strip. This terminology, unusual in the lexicon of modern diplomacy, implies a direct intervention in territorial governance and a reordering of long-standing political realities. In articulating his vision, the president argued that such a move would not only secure American strategic interests but also pave the way for the systematic redevelopment of a region long marred by conflict and neglect. The proposal goes beyond mere rhetoric. It suggests an active role for the United States in orchestrating a profound transformation of the territory, from its political structure and demographic composition to its economic potential and urban infrastructure. This vision, however, raises immediate questions about the legal, ethical, and practical ramifications of forcibly altering the status quo in one of the world's most contested regions. 3.3 King Abdullah II's response, caution and regional consultation. King Abdullah II, known for his measured diplomacy, responded to President Trump's proposal with a combination of cautious pragmatism and regional solidarity. In his remarks, the king emphasized the necessity of ensuring that any action taken would be good for everybody, a phrase that underscored the importance of balancing American strategic interests with the welfare of the people in the region, and particularly with the interests of Jordan. The king's insistence on convening a meeting of Arab nations to formulate a collective response highlights a critical point. Solutions imposed from outside, without regional buy-in, are unlikely to succeed. By advocating for a multilateral approach, King Abdullah II sought to protect the sovereignty of the affected populations and to ensure that any transformative plan would be rooted in the shared interests of the Arab world. 3.4 Analysis of the dialogue, strategic messaging and political theater. The exchange between President Trump and King Abdullah II was as much a display of strategic messaging as it was a substantive policy discussion. President Trump's bold language was designed to signal decisiveness and to galvanize support among his domestic base, while also attempting to project an image of American leadership that is unafraid to confront entrenched problems head-on. Conversely, King Abdullah II's measured rhetoric was aimed at mitigating potential fallout and preserving Jordan's long-standing reputation as a responsible mediator in regional affairs. In this context, every word carried weight. The president's framing of the issue as one of redevelopment and strategic necessity was counterbalanced by the king's insistence on a solution that would be good for everybody. This interplay of narratives reveals the inherent tensions in any proposal that seeks to redraw borders and reassign populations, and it underscores the immense challenges of achieving a lasting peace in a region defined by deep historical grievances. 4. Trump's proposal. Detailed examination of the vision for Gaza. 4.1 The concept of taking the Gaza Strip, terminology and implications. The use of the term taking by President Trump is both provocative and significant. In traditional diplomatic parlance, such language is rare and often associated with aggressive or unilateral actions. Here, it signals a radical departure from incremental peace negotiations toward a more direct, and potentially coercive, form of intervention. This section examines what taking the Gaza Strip might entail in practical terms, including the potential for military, administrative, and political involvement by the United States. The implications of this language are profound. A U.S.-led takeover of Gaza would not only challenge existing international norms regarding state sovereignty but also force a re-evaluation of decades-old policies concerning the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Critics argue that such a measure could lead to widespread instability, while proponents contend that bold, transformative action is required to break the cycle of violence and stagnation. 4.2 The proposal to relocate residents. Logistical, legal, and humanitarian considerations. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the proposal is the suggestion to relocate the residents of the Gaza Strip to Jordan and other Arab nations. This idea raises a host of questions. How would such a mass displacement be managed? What legal frameworks would govern the relocation? And what would be the humanitarian costs for the hundreds of thousands, or potentially millions, of people affected? From a logistical standpoint, relocating an entire population is an unprecedented undertaking in the modern era. The challenges include securing safe passage, providing temporary shelter, and eventually integrating displaced populations into new social, economic, and political systems. Legally, forced population transfers are fraught with complications under international law, particularly with respect to the rights of refugees and the principle of self-determination. Humanitarian organizations have long warned that large-scale displacement often leads to protracted crises, with long-term impacts on mental health, economic stability, and social cohesion. 4.3 Redevelopment plans for a war-torn territory, opportunities and challenges. The final component of the proposal is the redevelopment of the Gaza Strip, a region that has suffered immense damage from decades of conflict. On paper, the prospect of comprehensive reconstruction offers the promise of renewed economic opportunity and improved living conditions. Modern urban planning, infrastructure development, and investment in technology could, theoretically, transform Gaza into a model of post-conflict regeneration. Yet the challenges are equally formidable. Rebuilding in an environment marked by political instability, resource scarcity, and lingering mistrust among communities requires not only significant financial investment but also a carefully calibrated political strategy. The redevelopment process would need to be inclusive, transparent, and designed to meet the needs of all stakeholders, factors that have often been neglected in previous reconstruction efforts in conflict zones around the world. 4.4 The role of U.S. leadership in regional state building. Underlying President Trump's proposal is a broader vision of American leadership in state building. This approach, whereby the United States takes a direct role in restructuring political entities and overseeing their redevelopment, has precedence in American history, though it has often been met with mixed results. Proponents argue that decisive U.S. intervention can stabilize regions and foster long-term peace, while critics warn of the dangers of neocolonial overreach and unintended consequences. In the case of the Gaza Strip, the challenge lies in balancing the need for strong leadership with respect for local autonomy and cultural identity. The success of any U.S.-led initiative would depend on its ability to work collaboratively with local leaders, international organizations, and regional powers, an aspect that King Abdullah II's call for Arab consensus explicitly acknowledges. 5. Regional reactions and the Arab nations' perspective. 5.1 King Abdullah II's position, balancing national interest and regional stability. King Abdullah II has long been recognized as a pragmatic leader who carefully weighs Jordan's national interests against broader regional dynamics. In his remarks during the White House meeting, he emphasized the necessity of any proposal being good for everybody, particularly for the people of Jordan. For a nation that already shoulders significant demographic and economic pressures, the prospect of absorbing large numbers of Gaza residents is both an opportunity and a potential burden. The king's response reflects a dual mandate, to protect Jordan's stability while also contributing to a solution that could foster peace in a region long torn by conflict. His insistence on consultation with other Arab nations underscores a commitment to multilateralism and the belief that sustainable solutions must emerge from regional consensus rather than unilateral imposition. 5.2 The call for a collective Arab response, meetings and policy formulation. In a statement that resonated with many in the Arab world, King Abdullah II announced that a meeting of Arab nations would be convened to develop an alternative plan. This call for collective action is significant for several reasons. First, it signals that the Arab states are unwilling to accept a solution dictated solely by American strategic imperatives. Second, it reflects a desire to ensure that any action taken in Gaza considers the social, economic, and political realities of the region. The proposed meeting of Arab nations is expected to bring together diverse perspectives, from Gulf monarchies to North African republics, each with its own historical experiences and policy priorities. The outcome of such a consultation could have far-reaching implications, potentially leading to a unified Arab policy on the Gaza Strip that might either complement or contest U.S. proposals. 5.3 Perspectives from other Arab leaders and nations. While King Abdullah II's remarks were the most visible expression of Arab sentiment at the meeting, other leaders and policymakers in the region have also voiced their concerns and suggestions. Many Arab leaders have expressed skepticism regarding the feasibility of relocating entire populations, given the deep-rooted historical ties and identities that exist in the region. Moreover, there is widespread concern that a U.S.-led intervention, even if well-intentioned, might exacerbate existing tensions rather than resolve them. Some analysts have noted that the proposal could be perceived as an infringement on Arab sovereignty, a sentiment that might galvanize opposition among those who feel that regional issues should be resolved internally, without external interference. These diverse perspectives underscore the complexity of the situation and the need for a solution that is both context-sensitive and broadly acceptable across the Arab world. 5.4 The role of public opinion in the Arab world. Beyond the corridors of power, public opinion in the Arab world plays a critical role in shaping policy outcomes. In many countries, the plight of the Palestinian people is not merely a political issue but a deeply emotional one that resonates with historical grievances and collective identity. Any proposal that involves significant population transfers or the redrawing of borders is likely to spark passionate debate among citizens, civil society groups, and political activists. For governments in the region, the challenge lies in balancing international diplomacy with domestic expectations. Leaders must navigate a delicate political landscape where unpopular decisions, no matter how strategically sound, can have profound implications for social stability and electoral legitimacy. The success of any future plan regarding the Gaza Strip will therefore depend on its ability to win not only the approval of state actors but also the trust and support of the people it is designed to help. 6. Historical parallels and lessons learned. 6.1 U.S. interventions and proposals in the past, successes and setbacks. History is replete with examples of U.S. interventions in foreign lands, some of which have led to lasting change while others have produced unforeseen complications. In the Middle East, American initiatives have ranged from direct military engagements to diplomatic efforts aimed at brokering peace. Each episode offers lessons in the limits and possibilities of external intervention. For instance, the Camp David Accords of the late 1970s, which facilitated a peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, are often cited as a successful example of U.S. mediation. Yet, other efforts, such as the more recent interventions in Iraq and Afghanistan, illustrate how even well-intentioned initiatives can become mired in complexity and unintended consequences. The case of the Gaza Strip, with its unique historical and demographic challenges, is likely to present similar difficulties. 6.2 The legacy of partition and population transfers in the Middle East. The Middle East has witnessed several instances of partition and population transfer, each leaving a legacy that continues to influence contemporary politics. The establishment of Israel in 1948, for example, led to the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, a tragedy whose repercussions are still felt today. Other instances of forced migration and redrawn borders have similarly scarred the regional landscape, often deepening divisions and fueling cycles of conflict. Understanding this legacy is essential when evaluating proposals that involve relocating entire populations. History teaches us that population transfers, even when carried out with the best intentions, can result in protracted humanitarian crises, social fragmentation, and long-term instability. As such, any contemporary plan must reckon with these historical precedents and incorporate safeguards to prevent a repetition of past tragedies. 6.3 Comparative analysis with other conflict resolution strategies. A comparative analysis with other conflict resolution strategies, such as negotiated settlements, international peacekeeping operations, and local reconciliation initiatives, reveals the inherent risks of imposing top-down solutions on deeply divided societies. While unilateral actions may offer the allure of swift change, they often lack the legitimacy and local ownership that are crucial for sustainable peace. In contrast, negotiated settlements that involve all relevant stakeholders, even if they require prolonged negotiations and compromise, tend to have a better chance of lasting success. This observation underlines the significance of King Abdullah II's call for a collective Arab response, which suggests a preference for solutions that emerge organically from within the region rather than being imposed from without. 7. Implications for international law and diplomacy. 7.1 Legal dimensions of territorial acquisition and population relocation. The proposal to take the Gaza Strip and relocate its residents is fraught with legal complexities under international law. The principles of territorial integrity, state sovereignty, and the right to self-determination are enshrined in various international treaties and conventions. Any attempt to reassign territory or forcibly move populations would likely trigger intense legal scrutiny and could be interpreted as a violation of these foundational principles. Legal experts caution that such actions could set dangerous precedents, not only in the Middle East but globally. The potential for international litigation, sanctions, or other punitive measures must be carefully considered by any government contemplating such radical steps. In this light, the proposal raises critical questions about the balance between strategic objectives and adherence to the rule of law in international relations. 7.2 Human rights considerations and international norms. Beyond legal technicalities, the human rights implications of forced population transfers are profound. International human rights frameworks emphasize the protection of civilians in conflict zones and the right of individuals to remain in their homeland. Any proposal that involves large-scale displacement risks triggering violations of these rights, with severe consequences for the affected populations. Humanitarian organizations have repeatedly highlighted the risks associated with forced migration, including the potential for abuse, exploitation, and long-term psychological trauma. In developing any policy related to Gaza, it will be essential for policymakers to ensure that the rights and dignity of every individual are upheld, and that robust mechanisms for protection and redress are put in place. 7.3 The United Nations, international courts, and diplomatic precedents. The United Nations and its various bodies, such as the International Court of Justice and Human Rights Committees, will undoubtedly play a central role in evaluating any drastic shifts in the status quo of the Gaza Strip. Diplomatic precedents set by earlier interventions will be closely scrutinized, and the international community's response could shape the future course of events in the region. In this context, U.S. policymakers must be prepared to engage in multilateral diplomacy, justify their actions on a global stage, and work collaboratively with international institutions to mitigate potential backlash. Failure to do so could result in not only diplomatic isolation but also a lasting legacy of mistrust and resentment toward American leadership. 8. Economic, humanitarian, and security implications. 8.1 The economic costs and opportunities of redevelopment. Redeveloping the Gaza Strip is an undertaking of immense economic scale. On one hand, the investment required for rebuilding infrastructure, modernizing utilities, and revitalizing the local economy is staggering. On the other hand, a successful redevelopment effort could transform a region long defined by poverty and conflict into a hub of innovation and economic growth. This section examines the potential economic benefits and the enormous financial, administrative, and logistical challenges inherent in such an initiative. Key considerations include the sourcing of international funding, the establishment of transparent governance structures, and the integration of local labor and expertise into the redevelopment process. Economic analysts caution that any redevelopment plan must be meticulously planned and executed to avoid exacerbating existing inequalities or creating new sources of tension. 8.2 Humanitarian concerns, displacement, resettlement, and reconstruction. At the heart of any discussion about Gaza are the lives and well-being of its residents. Forced displacement carries enormous humanitarian risks, and the challenges of resettling a large population are formidable. This section delves into the potential human cost of relocating Gaza's residents, examining the likely impact on access to education, healthcare, and employment, as well as the broader social consequences of such a dramatic upheaval. Moreover, the process of reconstruction itself must be handled with sensitivity to the needs and rights of local communities. Ensuring that reconstruction efforts are participatory, transparent, and geared toward long-term sustainability is essential to avoid repeating the mistakes of previous post-conflict rebuilding initiatives. 8.3 Security and stability, risks and benefits for the region. Security considerations are paramount in any plan that involves the redrawing of borders and the relocation of populations. On one hand, proponents argue that U.S. leadership in redeveloping Gaza could lead to a more stable and secure environment in the long term, by ending cycles of violence and creating new opportunities for cooperation. On the other hand, the immediate security risks are significant. The process of relocating residents and transferring authority over territory could provide fertile ground for extremist elements to exploit vulnerabilities, potentially leading to renewed outbreaks of violence. A comprehensive security strategy would need to address not only the immediate risks associated with displacement and redevelopment but also the long-term challenges of building effective, inclusive governance structures that can maintain order and promote reconciliation among diverse communities. 9. Criticism, controversies, and alternative scenarios. 9.1 Domestic U.S. reactions, political debate and media analysis. Within the United States, reactions to President Trump's proposal have been sharply divided. Critics from across the political spectrum have decried the plan as overly aggressive, imperialistic, and likely to provoke backlash both domestically and internationally. Mainstream media outlets and think tanks have engaged in vigorous debates about the strategic wisdom of such an approach, highlighting potential pitfalls and questioning whether the benefits of redevelopment could ever outweigh the costs of forced displacement and regional destabilization. Supporters, on the other hand, argue that bold action is necessary to break the cycle of intractable conflict and that a decisive American intervention, if executed carefully, could ultimately foster peace and stability in one of the world's most troubled regions. 9.2 International criticism, allies, adversaries, and global observers. Beyond American borders, international reactions have been equally varied. European allies, for example, have expressed concerns about the potential for human rights violations and the destabilizing effects of any unilateral territorial reorganization. Adversaries and critics in the broader international community warn that the proposal could set a dangerous precedent, encouraging other states to adopt similarly radical measures in pursuit of strategic objectives. Global observers have called for a more measured, consultative approach, one that prioritizes diplomacy, respect for international law, and the rights of the people directly affected by any proposed changes in sovereignty or territorial governance. 9.3 Alternative proposals and diplomatic solutions. In light of the controversies surrounding President Trump's proposal, several alternative strategies have been put forward by policymakers, academics, and regional leaders. These alternatives range from renewed peace talks facilitated by the United Nations to innovative, multilateral frameworks for economic and social redevelopment that do not require drastic population transfers. In many analyses, the preferred path forward involves incremental change driven by locally initiated reconciliation processes, rather than externally imposed solutions. Such proposals emphasize the need for comprehensive dialogue among all stakeholders, including Israel, the Palestinians, and neighboring Arab states, so that any resolution to the Gaza question is not seen as an imposition by external forces, but rather as a mutually agreed upon path to sustainable peace. 9.4 What could go wrong? Risks and unintended consequences. No policy is without risk, and the potential unintended consequences of radically altering the status quo in Gaza are manifold. This section considers the worst-case scenarios, from renewed violence and civil unrest to the international isolation of the United States and its allies. It also explores how a poorly executed plan could exacerbate long-standing grievances, fuel extremist movements, and undermine the fragile prospects for lasting peace in the region. The analysis here is not meant to be merely speculative. It draws on historical precedents and case studies from other conflict zones where well-intentioned interventions ultimately led to protracted instability and unforeseen complications. 10. Future outlook, possibilities, predictions, and policy recommendations. 10.1 The evolving role of U.S. leadership in the Middle East. As the geopolitical landscape continues to shift, the role of the United States in the Middle East is itself evolving. This section examines how current trends, such as the rise of regional powers, the proliferation of non-state actors, and the changing nature of global alliances, might influence the feasibility and desirability of an American-led initiative in Gaza. It also explores how U.S. policy can adapt to meet the dual challenges of advancing its strategic interests while fostering a stable, self-sustaining regional order. 10.2 Pathways to peace or further instability. The central question that underpins all discussions of this proposal is whether such radical action will lead to a genuine, durable peace or merely sow the seeds of further instability. Drawing on expert assessments, historical analogies, and scenario planning, this section provides a range of potential outcomes, outlining both optimistic and pessimistic trajectories for the region. It emphasizes that the ultimate success of any intervention will depend on the willingness of all parties to engage in honest dialogue, compromise, and a commitment to long-term reconciliation. 10.3 Strategic recommendations for regional stakeholders. Given the high stakes involved, this analysis concludes with a series of strategic recommendations for all key stakeholders, including the United States, Arab nations, and international organizations. These recommendations stress the importance of building multilateral coalitions to share the burden and benefits of any intervention, ensuring that humanitarian safeguards are firmly in place before any population transfers occur, prioritizing transparent, participatory governance in any redevelopment efforts, developing a clear, realistic timeline that accounts for the complexities of state building in a conflict zone, investing in long-term economic, social, and educational programs to help rebuild trust and facilitate integration. 10.4 Concluding reflections on the way forward. The future of the Gaza Strip, and by extension, the future of peace in the Middle East, remains uncertain. However, the boldness of the proposals emerging from high-level meetings such as that between President Trump and King Abdullah II underscores the urgent need for new ideas and fresh approaches. While the challenges are immense, the potential rewards, a more stable, prosperous, and just region, were equally significant. The road ahead will require courage, ingenuity, and an unwavering commitment to the principles of human dignity and international cooperation. 11. Conclusion. 11.1 Summarizing the key findings. In this extensive analysis, we have examined the contours of a proposal that has the potential to reshape not only the Gaza Strip but also the broader dynamics of Middle Eastern politics. From the provocative language used by President Trump to the measured caution of King Abdullah II, every element of the dialogue reflects deep-rooted tensions, historical legacies, and the complexities of contemporary geopolitics. The proposal's ambitious vision for territorial control, population relocation, and redevelopment presents both opportunities and formidable challenges, legal, humanitarian, economic, and political. 11.2 Final thoughts on vision, diplomacy, and realpolitik. The meeting at the White House stands as a stark reminder that in a world of shifting alliances and persistent conflicts, bold ideas continue to emerge even from the most unlikely quarters. Yet, as history has taught us, transformative change can only be achieved when vision is tempered by pragmatism, and when unilateral ambition is balanced by multilateral engagement. The future of the Gaza Strip, and the stability of the broader region, will depend on the ability of leaders to navigate this delicate balance, to learn from the past, and to forge a path that respects both the letter and the spirit of international law. While President Trump's proposal may represent an extreme vision of American leadership and intervention, it also serves as a catalyst for debate, inviting regional and global actors to rethink traditional approaches to conflict resolution, state building, and international cooperation. As Arab nations prepare to convene and formulate their own response, the coming months will be critical in determining whether this moment of high-stakes diplomacy will pave the way for a new chapter of peace and prosperity, or whether it will plunge the region into further uncertainty. This article has provided a comprehensive, multi-layered analysis of a proposal that is as controversial as it is ambitious. From historical context to legal implications, economic challenges to humanitarian concerns, the discussion is far from settled. However, by engaging with these complex issues in a systematic and thoughtful manner, policymakers and citizens alike can better understand the stakes involved and work toward solutions that honor both the strategic imperatives of the modern world and the enduring rights of those who call the Middle East home.